Hey, this is Brian G, the EVOG, and welcome back to our monthly EVOG podcast. I'm joined again by my friend Adam from Adam's Everything EV. And for our podcast this month, we're going to do something different. Adam had a terrific idea that I think aligns with the timing of all the stuff that's in play right now with Fisker, the most interesting car brand so far for FY24, right? And that's saying something with the Cybertruck having been launched this year. So, Adam, why don't I kick it to you? Talk a little bit about what we're going to do, and let's get going.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me at such a turbulent time and putting all this together. You and I had a back and forth very briefly about what do we talk about right now, because so much is up in the air, but I thought, why don't we just address that head on? There are so many questions, and I know the audience really likes the contrast between your and my take on things. So let's just take advantage of that. There are so many questions, and Brian and I have a working list, and I figure we can just go through them and maybe get our take on each one. And then next month we can talk about who was right, because I think it's all speculation now, and there's no reason to say one way or the other. But I think the speculation itself is extremely interesting. Like you said, the most interesting car brand on earth. So I think you should probably kick this off. What's the first thing you want to talk about?
Well, there's a lot of different places we could start, right? But I think one of the burning questions out there is who's actually piloting the ship, right? Who do we think is actually running Fisker right now? Because Henrik and Gita have been eerily silent, right? So what's your sense of that? Let me kick it to you to get started there.
Sure. In my opinion, that Fisker doesn't have any, and this is all based on the facts that I unveiled, and I just want to really quickly congratulate you on such an extremely succinct and well put together video, your last video. Make sure you check that out on the channel. EVOG, I'll leave a link. But all the news that's happened in the last, let's say, week and a half plus, you were able to sum up in one really good video. So if you're kind of behind on what's going on with Fisker, definitely check that out. Based on the information in the 10K and then this 8K that came out earlier and some of the other peripheral stuff that's been going on, I don't think Henrik Fisker and Gita have any other choice. They want to continue to exist for now. And at that point, the forbearance agreement is the only way they still exist. So I think the terms of that, the investor involved, and then whatever outside things were going on is going to determine everything. And if you want to elaborate on that or you have another take, feel free.
So I'm going to take a page out of I'm blanking on the name of the movie, but I want the truth, Adam. You didn't answer the damn question. Who do you think is running Fisker?
It's got to be the note holder. There's no question, because Gita and Henrik are, well, you sent me a really good nugget today, and I'm just going to throw it out there that Fisker's home right now is worth more than Fisker the company. So they're just holding on for dear life. The last forbearance agreement was $500,000. So there was a monetary advantage there for the note holder to basically delay this collection of everything. This most recent forbearance agreement that ends on May 1st, which is like almost right now, there's no money. So there has to be a control. And in my opinion, the 8K was Henrik's last chance. That Hanley, Mike, that's Henrik's last guy. And this new guy did not know. I think that's the bankruptcy guy, and I think all shots are being called by the note holder right now. I just think Henrik Fisker has the ability to stand up in front of the crowd and say, any good news that maybe potentially be on the horizon, like we saw in the Business Insider article. But other than that, I think he's out of he's left the seat. The seat's no longer a hot seat. He's just no longer in it.
Yeah, so I disagree. The seat's definitely still hot.
Okay.
There's no question about that. Right. The seat is still very much hot because as I know I had talked about before, I can't remember if we did it on the podcast, this is his last shot, this is their last shot, right? They're not going to be trusted again to start up a new company and go run it, right? This is their last shot.
Sure.
And so I think that seat's still hot. I also think that the note holder is calling the shots, right? And I'm starting to wonder who the heck did they go to, right, for this investment?
Right.
But then again, anyone that made that level of investment and is seeing this level of return or non-return would probably, be like, one of the bosses in The Sopranos where, you start breaking knees, right? You start heating up the seat,
Yeah.
right? You really start to become an elephant in the china shop, right? So I agree with you there. The note holder is probably calling the shots. And one of the things that I'm curious about, and this is where I'm going to throw it back to you, how do you think, since we agree, right, the note
Sure.
holder is calling the shots, how do you think the note holder will impact the path forward, whether it's buyout, whether it's bankruptcy? Because I think we both heard through the grapevine that, the offer that came and was declined, right? That was declined by the note holder.
Yes.
So what type of impact do you think the note holder has on the path forward?
I really think that, okay, I'm just going to let's do a weird analogy. How about if I'm herding sheep and the sheep are going away, I'm going to shave them all first. I think he's just going to make sure, let's say he or she, for lack of a better term for this note holder, is going to say, I'm first in line for everything. I want this and this and this. And I think once the note holder makes whatever claim is going to happen, I think there's absolutely nothing left. I just think that it's all gone. The money, the assets, the IP, it's all just going to be claims to this note holder. And then at that point, it just becomes a sale from the note holder to whoever. That's why Deutsche Bank is involved. That's why this Dodonto guy is involved. I feel like it's just all going to the note holder, and then they'll decide. And I think the impact will be our warranties will be almost impossible to honor because those are just going to go away. And bankruptcy is purely inevitable. If you want the really quick take on that would be my take.
So I do think that the note holder is going to be first in line, right? I don't necessarily agree that the warranties and all that stuff go bye-bye, right? And part of the reason I say that is Fisker is still a public company. It's not a private company owned by the note holder, right? So they have to operate as a public company. There are certain things that they've got to do, right, to stay in good standing as a public company. Now, it's probably on the table or on the board that the company is taken private, right? That's a process that could be enacted.
The total liability on the balance sheet is $900 million. So is there $1 billion worth of IP at Fisker? And what do you think it is?
I'm going to go with no, Alex.
Okay.
And I don't need to phone a friend for help with my answer to that question. You did a great job of reading through the 10K. Certainly saved me a ton of time, right? Because I just didn't have the cycles to read through all of that document. So on behalf of the community, Adam, huge thank you for doing that. We'll make sure we link the 10K read in the description of this video. But yeah, I mean, what are we talking about in terms of assets, right? We're talking about the FM29, right? These EV platforms, whether or not they're worth 9 digits, I guess we'll find out, right? But I don't think we will find out unless and until a bankruptcy procedure takes place. And the reason I say that is what you just called out in terms of call it $1 billion in debt, right, that the company has. And it would just be in my estimation, financial malfeasance to complete any sort of buyout of Fisker without making sure that there's been some type of renegotiation or reset on those debts. And so that gets me to the next question that I would bring back to you, which is Chapter 11 versus Chapter 7, and which one of those do you see happening and why?
I definitely want to join you on there's not enough to go around in order to solve all this debt. And the more I look at it, the more I realize that Chapter 7 is going to have to happen. Now, I would love for Chapter 11 to take place because that's how we get our warranties. And that's how, existence continues and restructuring becomes part of the conversation. But it is my opinion that FM29 is a copy of something you can get from Magna at a higher level of quality for a similar price, minus the debt. And the Pear platform and the Alaska platform, which is just a copy of FM29 with some revisions. But I believe the Pear platform is just a piece of paper and nothing else. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. And I know there's a prototype of the Pear. We've all seen it on video. So what do they liquidate? What do they restructure? And I can send it right back to you. In the event there's a buyer, who is the buyer and why would they buy? Unless you want to give your take on the other part.
Well, so I think we should probably double click into IP assets for a second, right? We talked about the EV platforms, and you mentioned the Pear. We didn't necessarily mention the Alaska, which is essentially on the same platform as the Ocean, right? There's also some intellectual property around things like the Houdini hatch, right? The back hatch on the Pear. And I believe the Alaska had that same sort of disappearing feature on the pass-through between the bed and the cab.
I think the Alaska, it literally just looked like they had a hole that they pressed a button and dropped a piece of plastic in. But yes, it does.
Listen, we're not talking about the quality of
okay,
of
fair enough. Fair enough.
In the reveal, because I 100% agree, right? That looked cartoonish.
Agree, yeah.
Totally agree. But assuming there's some IP associated with the design and the engineering of that type of vehicle feature, which we've never seen before, right? There's some level of IP to that another manufacturer might see value in, right? And factor that into the acquisition offer. So I do think that is real. The question is always going to come back to how much is that worth, right? What's somebody going to be willing to pay? And I believe we won't know the answer to that question until the bankruptcy happens.
Correct.
So that investor, right, or that person that's buying them out has some level of control over the level of indebtedness that they would be taking on with the note holder and any other suppliers that factor into that almost $1 billion of debt.
So who's the buyer? Let's just say there are 4 offers. I don't believe that, but okay, first of all, do you believe that? Do you believe there are 4 buyers?
I wouldn't call them buyers.
Okay. We're on the same page there.
Right.
Let's say they do exist. Who are they?
I wouldn't. So I think they're OEMs primarily. When you think about Fisker and assets that they can bring to the table, say what you will about the EV platforms and how valuable those are. The other aspect of IP assets is design. So
in a quick aside, I ran everybody out of the AutoZone today. When I pulled in, the entire I evacuated the store.
To check out
completely evacuated the store. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
No. You're making the point, right? In terms of the impactfulness of what they have to bring to bear in terms of design. So I do think we're talking about OEMs here. I wouldn't call them buyers just yet. I almost want to call them investigators. Because as you pointed out, I can't remember if it was in the 10K, it was in one of your videos over the last week. This is the first time that you're getting a look inside the kimono, right? It's the first time with this 10K that you've got total transparency, right? To see exactly what's going on within the company in terms of the books, right? In terms of IP, right? So I think that's what this exercise is. Any OEM, I think, would be doing themselves a disservice by not at least investigating this. I heard somebody, I think it was the Ocean One guy, actually reference Tesla as one of the potential buyers of Fisker, and I'm like, dude, seriously?
If
No.
one of our investigators is Tesla, the goal there is just to humiliate Henrik Fisker by buying his IP and shelving it forever. It's like a patent troll. That's a thing. You buy patents, or you write patents, and then if someone tries to make it, then you say, no, I made it already. I made the patent for it. But it would be a humiliation thing. It would be like a joke. It's like, Elon likes memes. This would be like, I'm going to turn your company into a meme by shelving your technology. But they're not an investigator. What's worth $1 billion? Okay, so here's my investigators. BYD, XPeng, NIO, and Stellantis. Those are my actual investigators. The three Chinese companies would, first of all, they have the cash. Secondly, they can buy out the debt. Thirdly, access to the U.S. market is worth $1 billion. Period. Now, how do you do that? Here's the other thing. Stellantis is the fourth investigator because they're the only brand that is diluted enough already with so many names that they could keep the Fisker name. If any other OEM, Ford, GM, Nissan, Honda, whoever else, Kia, whoever else, were to buy Fisker, they would shelve the name immediately. I feel like Stellantis could get away with keeping the name. That's my take.
Love it. It's not something that, frankly, I spend much time thinking about, right? I take the approach of, I'm going to wait and see what happens. But your point about what is worth $1 billion and answering that question with access to the U.S. market, right? And it's not just the U.S., right? It's all Canada, all the places that Fisker is homologated with this vehicle, with this platform, if you will. So that's not something that I had considered, right? Market access, if you will, is definitely something that's worthwhile.
Yeah, I have
whether or not it's worth $1 billion, debatable, but now we're starting to get into those 9 figures if we're talking access to a market with potentially multiple vehicles, right, across different platforms. The small SUV space that the Ocean plays in is white hot. You've got the pickup market, and in this case, it would be sort of a niche in that smaller size, not even mid-size, but small pickup, right? So I think you make a brilliant point there.
Access to the U.S. market, that's the Holy Grail. It's also the death watch for Ford, Stellantis, and GM, and Honda, and the Japanese companies can watch out as well because they're just not on board with the future. They're riding the 3-month numbers into the grave if they don't make an offering, at least a more compelling offering than they're already making. So once again, these are controversial opinions, but I will finally on that point, I shout out my commenters. Access to the U.S. market was pitched to me in a comment. So that was not from the Adam Brain Trust. That was from the community. So shouts out to them.
Where do we want to go next? Some of these topics that we've got outlined.
First of all, tell me about your recent experience with the car and just like a quick, let's just do a quick vibe check. Give me some of your, like your Ocean One vibes. How are you feeling about the car? because this is what Cape Cod mode. It's that time of year, and then follow that up with Ocean One benefits. What's your likelihood of receipt on those Ocean One benefits?
I've got the great privilege of, when I decide to leave the house, deciding whether or not I want to take the Fisker Ocean, assuming my wife isn't going to kill me. Can I take the Rivian R1T or our 2018 Model S? Yesterday, I was going to play golf. As I was getting ready, I checked the weather, right? And it's still spring, but yesterday the weather was 85 degrees. And so I said, man, I want to drive the Ocean. And I want to put this puppy in what I'm calling Cape Cod mode. I'm not on the West Coast, so this is Cape Cod mode for me. I had my tunes going, and one of the first tunes that came on was a song called On the Ocean by an artist called Avant. And it's one of my favorite songs. It was just such a wonderful experience. I had no ADAS faults, no silly beeps or bongs. The only beeps that I got were ones that I wanted, where the car was telling me, hey, heads up, there's a speed camera about 1.5 miles up the road, right? And I got several of those warnings because where I was going is a highly enforced area for those cameras. So that's just one experience with the vehicle. I had another one just real quickly on Saturday at an Earth Month event where I was parallel parking, got the car in, and I was about to get out, and I noticed on the driver display, it's giving me a warning, hey, you got traffic approaching on the left side of the vehicle from the rear, right? So just a little thing, but adds to the quality of life on the Ocean. Fisker has tens of millions of dollars in deferred revenues based on what they had shared with us in the last earnings call and in those unaudited financial statements. The number was about 44.6 million or somewhere, call it 45 million in deferred revenues. And those deferred revenues are over-the-air software updates that they've got to deliver before they can recognize those dollars on their books, right? So those monies have to be set aside. They can't touch them. And you and I have both talked to people inside the company. That's why there's this huge focus on getting software updates out, because with each set of features that they add, they can get some of that money out of deferment and onto their books. The other part of that deferred revenue, and it was called out specifically, are the Fisker Ocean One benefits package. Whether or not we actually see it, it is accounted for on their books as a part of their deferred revenues. And so if they want to take advantage of those deferred revenues and bring them onto their books, into their account, so to speak, they need to deliver on those things. So I'm holding out hope that might happen, but we'll see.
Great points. In my opinion, the books, while they are factual now, I believe they've been, let's see, for lack of a better term, drawn with a crayon. And I don't know how real any of it is, except that 53 million, which is probably half that by now, number. And I just don't see at the end of the day, is it pay the employees or honor the Fisker Ocean One benefits? I know what they're going to do. And I think that's going to end up being an issue. But like you said, on the books, yes. But, once you open the coffers and there's nothing in there, there's nothing in there.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
The next thing is a little confusing, I think. New dealerships. We're launching Miami. Charlotte is on board. I know I'm leaving some out. If you're a new dealer, why do you sign on? And, what's the angle?
Yeah, I struggle with this one, right? To understand. I was shocked when I saw the Fisker Miami announcement come out, and now I'm hearing that there's a possibility that Oarsman might become a thing again. I don't remember who said the quote. The answer to all your questions is money. you had a great take on that. So I'm going to toss it back to you to get your take on why they're doing it.
The first thing people ask me about the car now when they see it, when I evacuated this AutoZone, they're like, hey, is this company really just completely defunct? So like the general public now knows. So why would I take on a dealership? And the answer has got to be the profit margin for these cars has completely been forfeited. As in, the kickback is now bigger. The contract is now sweeter for you if you sell these cars for us. And that also makes me kind of think about service. But I mean, that's it. You got a $40,000 car. If I'm a dealer, it's got to be $10,000 per car or $5,000. It's got to be a really big chunk for me to, to sell somebody something that, and just I'll pose this question to you and kick it back to you. Are people signing away the warranty and recognizing that, hey, I'm buying a defunct company's car when they're buying these cars? That's a rumor. Have you heard this?
I think I actually saw it in Kim Java's video on the Atlanta Fisker owner meetup for Earth Day a couple weeks back, where she actually interviewed the GM. She asked him the question, what are you telling people, that are coming in to look at these cars, test drive them, and potentially buy them? And he said, we're not sugarcoating anything. We're telling people, we're in the same boat as you, right? If you choose to go down the path of buying a Fisker Ocean, the company is in a tough spot right now. But the fact is, if you look at the headlines, pretty much every EV startup is in dire straits right now financially, right? So Fisker is no different, but the company isn't dead. They're still here, right? They're working with us to get these vehicles delivered to customers, updating the software on them, and so on. So the impression I got from him was that, for those people who are going into this, it's typically folks that are going into it with eyes wide open, right? They understand that this car 2 weeks ago was $70,000, and now you can get it for $37,000. And the fundamentals, as we've said about this vehicle, are really, really strong. It's just a question of, are you going to get a completed vehicle from a software standpoint, and are you going to have access to service?
Our service members have been, let's just say, busy lately, obviously with the delivery of these cars to the dealerships. And what do you think is going to happen with service? Let's say May 1st rolls around and you get some big announcement. Let's not even speculate on what it is, but service has to change. There's nowhere for these mobile service techs to be out of anymore. We've had rumors about leases of buildings they used to have not, being kept up to date. So, and also rumors about dealer service. So what's your take on how this transition occurs? Yeah. And is dealer service going to exist?
I think the reality is starting to set in for some of us, that the experience that we've had with mobile service is quickly coming to an end. And depending on where you are, here in Maryland, I don't really have a dealership that we can go to. And as I said, Owings Mills is closed. So what's my closest Fisker dealership that I can go to for service potentially? And is that dealer even trained right now? And are they even accepting service appointments from Fisker customers? So a lot of that is part of the unknown right now.
I think that's a great point. These dealers aren't, and when they say new dealership, these aren't new dealerships. These are existing dealerships with service infrastructure. And most importantly, they have existing service technicians. So if I'm a mobile service tech for Fisker right now, and obviously my job has changed a lot recently, but if it changes again to this dealer service model, is my job to train my replacement and then walk away? Because I would definitely feel that way if someone says, hey, you got to go to this new dealership and, train these techs that already exist that maybe service, a Hyundai or a Volkswagen or a Cadillac. and, hey, you got to get them trained up so they can do service for these Fiskers. And then what? And especially a mobile service tech, what is the likelihood that their current domicile is also a domicile where there's going to be an existing dealership? Just like you said, unless Oarsman comes back, you don't have anywhere to go. You're like, what, a Charlotte?
Assuming there is a dealer there, or Long Island is the best case scenario.
You made another good point. Only dead cars. I've had one conversation with one service tech saying that at one point they had to cancel all their appointments, for a time window that they'd already scheduled in order to go with this new fire sale, for lack of a better term. So
I'd like to see the next step happen, right? So whether it's Chapter 11 or one of those investigators that we talked about earlier, conducting due diligence on Fisker, sees enough to, do something. This sort of sunken place that we're in right now it's uncomfortable, right? Because there isn't a yes, there isn't a no. It's we don't know what's going to happen, right? If we see what type of bankruptcy is declared, right, we know at that point, what the path forward is going to look like. If we see or hear that there's an agreement reached, right, that'll give us a sense of, where we're going. But just continuing to drift on the ocean, right, without a real rudder, winds are calm, right? So we're literally just adrift on the ocean. But that actually brings me to another item that we've got on our list, right? And your read on the 10K shed the light on it, which is the fact that there is this class action suit that has been brought against Fisker in the state of California.
I don't know how to get involved in it. So commenters, anybody who knows anything, please, down below, help us out. Let us know what you know about this class action suit, and if any, there are any details out there. But I think owners are going to have a little more trouble, because just like with the lemon law, you need something that is abnormal with your specific automobile. If all the automobiles are incomplete, the lemon law doesn't apply. But if I'm investing in the company and my ownership of the company is based on what I've been told, what has been said, and what has been published, and those things aren't true, there's a claim there. There's so much to know. And if you guys want me to do a video, a deep dive, or Brian, please let us know in the comments below.
The bigger question is, even if, that case gets heard and, the jury or judge rules against Fisker, you can't get blood from a stone, right? So what's the remedy that we can expect? There isn't much of one, right? So
I will throw that right back at you. And if you want to know my take on the ocean benefits, the Ocean One benefits and the warranties, blood from a stone. That's how I feel about them.
Right.
Yes, there'll be a warranty claim. Yes, there'll be money allocated to it. Yes, it was expensed on the books. Who does the warranty work? How are they paid? That's where it starts to fall apart in my head. But yeah, you're 100% right. You can't get blood from a stone. Magna is a big deal too. We had those layoffs. We haven't touched on that yet. You definitely covered that very well in your video. If Fisker is bought out, let's say in the buyout situation, what happens to Magna in that context? And what's your take on that? Any thoughts?
So my thought is, any OEM that takes the leap of buying Fisker, I don't know that they're necessarily going to want to insource production of this platform, right, of this vehicle, when you already have a production line that's already in place. And you've also got a distribution supplier, global supplier chain that's already set up by Magna and Fisker to, get all of the supplies needed to build the vehicle. So I think if a buyout occurs, it's somewhat of a lifeline for Magna as well, as it relates to their investments that are already made in Fisker. And maybe we get to see, if not all 500, some percentage of those production line workers for Magna, get brought back to start building Oceans again. That would be the ideal scenario, but we're obviously a long way from there.
Sure.
But I don't see a scenario where a manufacturer, an OEM, buys Fisker out and decides to insource that, right? We know that it takes 2 to 3, perhaps even 4 or 5 years to get a new platform up and running. I just don't know how quickly they'd be able to do that. They'd be burning a lot of money in order to build it from the ground up. And why would you do that when Magna's already set up to do it?
I agree, and I'll just jump in right there. The only reason you do is if the grapes are really sour. If it's a poor contract, if it was poorly negotiated, if you can do the math and say, even if we retool, we can sell these for cheaper. I think that's probably the only chance that the insourcing happens. Very good points. I think I agree with you there. And
well, I think at that point they'd also have the leverage, right, to renegotiate with Magna. Because as we said, Magna's already got the sunk cost of a production line that's ready to go, right? So
I agree.
I would think that they'd be highly motivated to restart that production line and put those people back to work.
And also, if you've got a larger OEM with buying power, there's a lot of chance that there's already a relationship there with Magna. Magna makes a lot of stuff for a lot of people. So
yeah, and insourcing it would also require, in all likelihood, a new process of homologation, and nobody's going to want to go down that path.
No, it's too complex because Fisker made it complex and they decided to sell it everywhere at the same time. So you're absolutely right. There's regulatory hurdles there as well. Just really quick, because time is short, unfortunately. We've got a really big bonus coming next month. Brian and I are going to launch something together that we've worked on and gone back and forth with. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to both this channel and the EVOG channel for more details on that. Service manuals. I just got the emergency roadside manual. I have the technical service manual. Both of those are live on my Patreon and for YouTube members. YouTube members will get the emergency roadside manual today. I just got it today. So I have access to both of those full technical manuals. And just, for the sake of the protection of Fisker, they're on the paywall of the Patreon. So if you haven't had access to those, I have access to those. Final thing, just really quickly, the plates. Everybody got a call about the plates. And if you didn't get a call, I believe you got an email. Was that your situation?
Yeah, I actually got the phone call, but it came in as an unrecognized number. And I meant to accept the call, but I accidentally pushed the other button, so it sent it to voicemail. Then I checked my email, and I'd also gotten an email to that effect. So they're definitely following up to make sure that those I's are dotted and T's crossed.
I saw nothing but plates except for extremely new vehicles at the North Carolina meetup. And I've got a video coming out about that because I got to talk to a lot of owners, and there's some detail I really want to dive into from some of the owners, and just kind of where we're at as ocean people right now. And because, like you said, we're just out here floating around trying to think of what's next. Brian, anything else to add before we close up? I think
Yeah, just on that point, I really feel like the folks that really struggled with plates and registration and so on are folks that were earlier in the delivery process. But you mentioned that Chase was potentially involved.
Yeah, at least from reports from other owners, Chase was part of this, I guess, effort to get Fisker on the ball to get these titles. I had called Fisker Finance, and I know it has nothing to do with me, but I had called Fisker Finance in March and just said, hey, if I decide to sell this car, what do I do? I don't have anything that proves I own it. And they said, well, we'll create a document for you for, just to save time as far as the description. So that made me feel better. But I feel like so many people made that same effort because, you call the 844 number, you message the team, you try the chat, you hit the service thing on your app, which I don't think works anymore. Eventually, you're just going to call a number where you get a person involved with the system. And Chase was willing to answer the phone. So they were also willing to answer the call to get us, potentially some expeditious behavior on Fisker's part. And final point there, I agree 100%. September, October, November, that was where all the problems were.
Yeah. So it's good to put that behind us. I actually have plates. I have, the title here in my file cabinet drawer. And like I said, the goal right now is just to enjoy the ocean for as long as I can. And as the weather gets better, I think the opportunity to enjoy it increases. But I'm also curious to see what the next step is. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing, what happens here on May 1st. And, hopefully there's somewhat of a lifeline or a Chapter 11 that sets the stage for a lifeline. So that's what I'm hopeful for.
I couldn't agree more. Brian, I want to thank you so much for not only the effort you put in to, share with your followers exactly what's happened in the last few days, but for your optimistic and concise perspective of what you think is going to happen to Fisker in the future. I can't thank you enough for the insights. I think the community will agree there. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, and likewise, Adam, the work that you've been doing, it's funny, once you've got your hands on your own Fisker Ocean, you've been pretty prolific with the videos. So I appreciate you doing that, bringing information to the community. It certainly a lot of times is not affirmation, and that's fine. It's a different opinion. And I think given the reality of where we're at, different opinions matter. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'm loving this partnership.
I appreciate you. Subscribe to the EVOG. Subscribe to this channel for more. Big announcement next month. Brian, thanks so much for coming on.
Awesome. See you on the next one.
Take care.
Hey, smash the like button.
Thank you.